You got Adderall, Ritalin, Strattera, Wellbutrin, a bunch of others I haven't named, and all of these are supposed to work for ADHD. And you're just like, what is all of this even? Every one of those pills does something completely different. Weird, right? But before any pill, it's just you and your brain. Let's start at the baseline. Picture this. It is now noon on a day. You have been up for a while. Maybe you've been working, maybe you're at home, doesn't really matter. You're looking around you and you realize that it's a fucking mess. What have you been doing for all of these hours? You could have sworn you were keeping busy. Doing what? You know what I mean? And all you have to show for it is what? A mess? Well, you see, the problem was that everything has been fighting for its one spot at the spotlight this entire time. You need to read an email? That's right there. You feel like drinking something, just a tea or something? That's right there. You're hungry? That's right there. Have you called your mom? You should probably call your mom. That's right there. Have you called back your friend? Hello? That's right there. A task you were supposed to do? That's right there. A shopping list? All of it right there. All of those things and many, many more are fighting for one spot inside your head. Fighting. Constantly, one is pushing another, which is pushing another, which makes you feel so busy when you're handling these tasks. And then when you're looking back, it makes you feel like all of that time is just lost. Because now when you're looking back, you're like, what? Because each and every one of these was taking over completely. And under all of this, there's just you, a person who is trying their very best and trying and trying and trying. And you're never quite succeeding. You're always falling short. It's like your trying doesn't ever really count, but it should, right? So all of that would be you with ADHD, right? You probably realize you have ADHD kind of because of all of this. And now you're like, now what? So first fork in the road is, do I want meds or no meds? Both of these options, perfectly good options. There's really no wrong way to go about this. The only wrong way to go about this, if anything, is not to listen to yourself. It may be trial and error until you figure it out. And that could mean trial and error with meds until you realize you want no meds. It could mean trial and error with no meds until you realize you want meds. It could be trial and error with meds until you realize you want that med. Trial and error. But let's start with the first one. No meds. No meds is a universe of its very own. This means deciding a bunch of different things, a bunch of different options. You could be doing everything yourself, toughing it out. You could be building a life that works for your particular kind of brain so that you don't need to change anything about how you think, how you do things, and how you work. It could mean a bunch of therapy. There's a bunch of different types of therapy too. It could mean a bunch of coaching, life coaching, ADHD coaching, a bunch of different types of those. It could even mean taking vitamins that work for this. Whatever it may be, it's the route of not taking prescribed medication to help your ADHD, which you could choose because it's good for your health, you need it, you can't do meds, you don't feel like doing meds, or sometimes people will choose it because they don't feel that their ADHD is at that level where meds are what's needed. All of those things are completely valid. And so the no meds life is a full proud life to live, and it's not giving up on anything, it's not living without, and you shouldn't look at it like that. And then there's the medication option, and that's the meat of this video. There are two main families of meds for that. There's stimulants and non-stimulants, and boy, I'm just getting started. Stimulants. We talk about them, we fear them, we don't know anything about them. Stimulants aren't like gonna jazz you up. Well, they might. Taking a stimulant isn't going to be like drinking a ton of coffee. What it does is it stimulates a specific area of your brain, specific neurochemicals that have to do with focus and being settled. You're actually probably going to feel a lot calmer. A lot of people finally can sleep or take a nap when they're on stimulants. If you're really jittery when you're on stimulants, you're either on the wrong dose or maybe you don't have ADHD. So let's talk about the two big types of stimulants. There's a bunch of different names, but all in all, there's two different types. There's methylphenidate, aka Ritalin, and a bunch of other names. And there's amphetamine, aka Adderall, and that's it. Maybe one more name? We're gonna call them by their first name, Ritalin and Adderall. And you should be thankful I'm not calling them Rit and Addy. What do they do? How do they work? So when you have ADHD, there are two neurochemicals in your brain that leak out. Imagine that there is a cleaner, okay? And it keeps cleaning stuff out of your plate. And you have stuff on your plate and it keeps taking them out of your plate. And you're like, hey, hello, what? I didn't get to do anything yet. I didn't get to eat. And it keeps doing that your whole life. That's ADHD. So the way Ritalin works specifically is it takes the things on your plate, which are your dopamine and your norepinephrine. Dopamine is focus, motivation, follow through, stuff you're really good at, I'm sure. Norepinephrine is alertness and attention. More stuff you're amazing at, I'm sure. Those two are what's on your plate. Now, how does Ritalin work? So you take Ritalin in the right amount and it tells the cleaners to not come in yet. Stop it. Let them eat. Basically, both norepinephrine and dopamine, they do arrive, but they leave as fast as possible. What Ritalin does is block them from leaving, and so you can use them for longer. Amazing. So how does Adderall work? The same way as Ritalin, by stopping this leakage of norepinephrine and dopamine, but also it adds more norepinephrine and more dopamine into the system so that you have extra just in case. So why do we have both of these options? There are two types of people who would benefit from stimulants. People like me who take Ritalin do not need nor want any extra norepinephrine or dopamine. Our plate is full. We just need to make sure we eat it. And there's people who need more on their plate. Their plate isn't full. It's not full enough. They're hungry. They need more on their plate. That's the difference. But what happens when you take too much of either Ritalin or Adderall? Great question. If you take too much of Ritalin, it just stops. It just blocks the thing. So nothing really happens. The thing you will feel eventually, and I do not recommend it, because all it does is blocking, it blocks so much. No one ever cleans your plate out. So the levels of your dopamine and norepinephrine should be going down and then going up. That's how your body works. And when you block it so much, it's not letting anything out. You're making a mess. And if anything, what you're going to end up feeling is kind of angry, jittery, and honestly, less focused, less yourself. Now, what can happen if you overdo the Adderall? Way worse. So because Adderall adds dopamine and norepinephrine every time, on top of blocking, you are going to be the angriest person that's ever lived. You're going to be the most anxious person. You're going to have pretty much none of the focus that you thought you were going to have. Just jittery, just the worst. Couldn't recommend it any less. Why do I know so much about Adderall? Because I've tried it. And for a brain like mine that already has enough dopamine and norepinephrine, oh God, that was a nightmare. I was so angry. I do not recommend it. So the two meds, Ritalin and Adderall, work similarly but differently. The way to find out which one works for you, trial and error, baby, like we always do. That's just the way it is. Maybe one day they'll figure out a test to figure this out, but they haven't yet. Now let's talk about the scariest part about stimulants. Addiction. Now, I have personal experience with addiction to my stimulants. It wasn't physical addiction, it was emotional addiction. I find it very important to note how things can deteriorate, what they actually do to you, and what a big mistake it is, because it's a huge mistake. And I truly believe that I will be paying for this in the future. So how did it start? 20 years ago, when I had started taking Ritalin, I was experiencing rebounds. Rebounds are when the medication starts wearing off after a few hours and you all of a sudden get this big flare-up of ADHD symptoms like nothing before. Everything is worse. Your mood, you can't control your emotions, you can't control your reactivity, you feel more impulsive than ever, more bored than ever. I used to have a coach back then who I found out later was not well certified, and so she didn't know what she was doing. And she taught me that a good way to get rid of that feeling is to take a quarter pill as you're starting to feel that rebound. And that way, boom, you're good. And so I started taking quarter pills. And then I started seeing myself while on this medication as my true self, my ideal self. And so I thought more medication means better. If you've seen the movie Limitless or the TV show or both of them, you know what I'm talking about. But there is basically a pill in that world that makes you the smartest and most amazing self you could ever be. You can kind of like tap in and all of a sudden you know languages you've never known before. You all of a sudden know everything about math. All of a sudden you know everything about everything. And I saw Ritalin as that. In my eyes, I thought the more I take, the better I am. Instead of a quarter extra, I started taking half a pill extra, then a full pill, then 2, then 3. Soon enough, I had years and years of taking double, triple, quadruple the dose that I was supposed to take on a regular basis. And it felt to me in my head like if I was taking the correct amount, yes, it was fine, but it wasn't going to be peak me. And so I thought I was doing myself a favor. Well, what I was doing was literally the worst thing I could ever do for my health. And I was definitely not doing myself any favors. If I was believing that I was more or better with more medication, that meant that the less medication I was taking, the less myself I was. So with time, I was starting to believe that whenever I'm not on the medication, any moment in time that I'm not currently medicated or medicated enough by being overly medicated, I was nothing. I was garbage. I was not to be trusted, not to be talked to, nothing. This can affect you for life. I wasn't better with more medication. I was actually better with just enough medication because, as I explained to you, the medication was making sure that my dopamine and my norepinephrine were staying put and they weren't leaking right out. And so there wasn't anything that more medication could have done. We're done plugging, you know what I mean? The extra dose was not adding focus. It was not adding motivation. My focus, my motivation, all of those things were maxed out at the correct dose. That's what the dose is for. You get the dose so that it's exactly where you're supposed to be. It's the max. And above that, it's just overflow. What does overflow do? Terrible things. In recent years, I've been hearing more and more about people of all ages, kinds, creeds that have died in their sleep because of prior usage of stimulants. People lost their loved ones, their children, their parents, their partners because of stimulant medication. Now, that is rare, and I'm definitely not trying to fearmonger, but it's less rare when you take more than you're supposed to take. But definitely taking the right amount should not kill you, ideally. Finding that out made me start looking into this. And I started realizing that while I don't feel more focused or more myself or anything, while I am on more Ritalin than I'm supposed to be, I feel stressed, physically even. Sometimes I feel like I'm kind of trembling a little bit. I feel my heart beating. Like I always feel my heart beating when I'm on even a little bit more Ritalin than I'm supposed to be. I never feel more focused. I never feel like I'm more in it. Like that's it. Now I'm ready for work. I'm in the mainframe. No, but something is happening to my body and I definitely feel that. My anxiety was getting worse and worse and worse as well. That was my heart having stress and strain being put on it. And I was feeling it in real time over and over again and ignoring it. A lot of people that would die from this kind of medication, they have pre-existing heart conditions. Sometimes they don't know about, sometimes they know about, but don't know that they are connected, etc. You could say, well, I don't have that. But when you do this to your heart over and over again, when you put that much strain on your heart, that is the way to create a heart condition. So what's an extra pill doing for you? It's not giving you more focus. It's not giving you more motivation. It's giving you a faster heart rate at rest. It's giving you higher blood pressure. And it's putting more stress on your body. You don't want that. Nobody wants that. Again, it's not doing anything for your brain. That's literally the worst case scenario. You're literally taking your heart, one of the most important muscles in your body, except for the brain. Is that a muscle? And you're putting strain on it for nothing. For nothing. There's literally people these days that are saying that during your luteal phase of your menstruation or the week before you get your period, your meds won't be working as well. So in that week, you should take extra. You should maybe even ask your prescriber to prescribe you extra. Please don't do that. That week, you might feel more scattered, tired, foggier. But understand that your medications are still working under all of that, working on your brain, doing all of the things, you just feel it a little less because there is that fog on top of it. It's on top of everything. It's going to be on top of it even if you take more meds, because as I explained, more meds cannot help. You're just tired. Taking more meds and straining your heart, your body, your brain also, it's not going to do any good. You're tired, so you can rest. More pills don't fix tired. They might cover up tired and make you feel for a second like pretending is nice, but let me tell you something. You're going to feel more tired, more stressed, and more overwhelmed with more medication like that. The only way the meds work in that way is that they will mask it a bit by overloading your heart for nothing. You're not going to be more focused. You're not going to be more motivated. It's not going to happen. Now, I want you to understand all of this thing that I'm saying is just about extra medication. When you take it as it is prescribed, when you have ADHD, you get prescribed it and you take it as prescribed, trust me, it can change your life. It has changed mine. I am still taking my medications. But don't be tempted to think that this is the kind of thing that the more you take, the better you are. You're given that very specific amount, not because people are cheap and not because they want you to do just the bare minimum, but because this is a tippity top of what your brain can handle, the max level. On top of that, it's an overflow. You don't want to overflow, because what is overflow? It is heart attacks, stroke, sudden death, a bunch of different things that you could go through years to come. I still might go through things in the future, and I understand that now. And it's one of those things that I have to take and understand, because I've done stupid things in my life. I've also done tanning beds in my life. So I'm paying for that too. I'm going to be paying for that. Now, with Adderall, you could actually get physically addicted because Adderall adds dopamine and norepinephrine. Specifically, dopamine is what could get you addicted. That would mean you would continuously think that you should get more because it's not doing what you think it should be doing. When I tell you, you are not the judge of that, I need you to listen to that, okay? Because it can be so subjective. What is it supposed to be like? What are you supposed to look like and feel like when you're on your tippity-top best way of being focused? It's not going to always look the same, and that's normal. That's how people are when they don't need Ritalin or Adderall or any of the medications. There's an idea in the world of stimulants, in particular with Adderall, that if you take these medications for a very long time, with time, you will have to start taking more and more and more and more incrementally, because your body will get used to it and it will no longer work the way it used to. Don't believe it. Don't believe it. You are not a good guide for whether it feels the same or feels like it's working. Only a prescribing doctor who knows what they're doing is going to be able to tell you stuff like that. You shouldn't be the one coming to your doctor being like, "Doc, I think I need more," because what you would be chasing is that kind of almost bad feeling that you had in the beginning where it was too intense because you're not used to having more dopamine and norepinephrine. Now, your brain does change and get used to it. Basically, it's kind of like there's these spots for the dopamine and norepinephrine to land on. The receptors, they're the docking spots. And your brain slowly, when it realizes there's just too much, removes docking spots. Why do you think your brain does that? Do you think your brain does that because it thinks that you should probably take even more? I don't. I think our brain is doing whatever it can to protect us, protect itself. And if it's removing docking spots, then it wants less. It's putting less parking, so it wants less cars. You don't add cars if there's less parking. So my point of view from 2 decades of both research and actual meds experience on my own is that tolerance is a bullshit term. The odds that you're building up a tolerance are so low, it's crazy. And even if you are, it's not like the meds aren't working. They're working, maybe a little tiny bit less effectively than what they did before. But they're working. Now, each person does their own thing, but I will tell you what I would do personally. Personally, if this happened to me, which it didn't, I've been taking the same dose for 20 years. But if this had happened to me and my doctor would have said, I want to raise your dose, I would start considering different meds instead, or I would start considering adding to this current medication in its current state a non-stimulant to help it produce the desired results. We should not be messing around with our brains and bodies like this. We shouldn't be taxing them like that. So remember, if your brain developed a tolerance, your brain is telling you something. Your brain doesn't want more. And here's a topic that I don't hear people talk about, and that is sleep. A lot of times when you take stimulants, even if the stimulants are long gone from your system because you took them hours and hours and hours ago, sometimes you lie in bed and you kind of feel like, I don't know, if I had to take a test right now, I probably could. You know what I mean? You feel like you're too able to be sleeping right now. And so I've always wondered about this. I've always had sleep issues until recently. Taking medication to kind of undo what the Ritalin or Adderall or whatever does is the way a lot of people have gone. It doesn't really work. Medication that makes you sleepy doesn't really make you sleep well. You don't want to just stuff yourself with even more medications. And the honest truth is, you don't have to. I told you before, stimulants in the ADHD sense aren't coffee. You don't take it and then you can do like a run you couldn't do before. Why can't you fall asleep? Well, the problem is the norepinephrine. Now, you don't need to know much, but what you do need to know is what norepinephrine is responsible for. The prepping, the thinking, the resolving, the solving, the little detective in your head. How do you fall asleep when your norepinephrine is like and being an adorable little detective? I can tell you what I do, and I can tell you what my clients do and what has worked. If it doesn't work for you, then please come back and let me know, because we can figure it out together. Think of norepinephrine, or as I like to call it, nori. Do I like to call it that? Think of it like a gremlin. You should not feed a gremlin after midnight. You should not feed nori after midnight. How do you feed nori? By giving it something to chew on, to resolve, to think about, to ponder, to figure out. A lot of the time, our brains kind of do this by accident. All of a sudden, you're thinking about the day you had, and then you kind of start drifting into thinking about, I should have done this, I should do this. And then you think about tomorrow a little bit. And now tomorrow, you're not sure if you should do this or that or this or that. And now you're kind of trying to resolve it. What you want to do is make your brain wander about. You know, when you go on a trip somewhere and you can have a day that is fully planned out, where you have to go from one place to the other, to the other, to the other, and you have very specific time frames for everything, and it's kind of exciting and exhilarating and also super stressful and too much almost. And then, you know, when you have days when you're just wandering around the city, taking it in, kind of experiencing it, you kind of are aimlessly wandering. That's what you want to do. You want to aimlessly wander in here. How do you do that? What kind of thoughts are aimless wandering? Glad you asked. What you want is to think about things that are just neat and inconsequential. Here are several examples. How much do you remember about TV shows you used to watch in childhood? And how much do you remember about how you used to think about them? Think about the characters and try to remember, you know, like if they were in high school, how did my younger self, pre-high school self, used to see them? What did it think? I bet you can remember. What were the lyrics of the opening theme song? Try to remember how you used to experience those opening themes back in the day. Were you having a great time? Were you standing there singing along? How old were you when you watched any of these? How much of your old school building or buildings do you remember? If you could take a walk mentally in the hallways of your school, can you do this and have a coherent picture of what the hallway looked like at a specific year or time frame? As you imagine yourself walking through these hallways, what memories are coming up for you? Are they social? Are they from classes? What are the most memorable things that these hallways have in store for you? Do you still remember all of the phone numbers that you used to have memorized when you were younger? Which ones do you remember best? Which ones can you not? Why do you think that is? At what age, if any, do you see a cutoff in remembering? Why do you think that is? Do you regret it? Do you wish you could remember stuff like that still? What do you think about all of it? Ponder about that. What was a full day of school like for you at each grade? starting from kindergarten, start to finish. Try to recreate every grade's typical day in your mind. Where are the holes in your memory? Specific classes, specific classrooms, certain years? Why are there holes, do you think? Can you remember recess from each one of these years? What is memorable about recess in those years? Do you think that you are remembering it the right way? Like, did that actually happen in 6th grade or did that happen in 5th grade? Try to figure it out and try to keep asking yourself, why do you think you remember some things and forget others? That's the perfect way to wander. And soon enough, you'll be asleep. I promise. Because norepinephrine has gone to sleep a long time ago. Now, the way stimulants work is kind of like over-the-counter painkillers, like ibuprofen or whatever. You have like a headache, you take that pill, like 20, 30 minutes pass. Now it affects you, and now you can calm down. And in a few hours, you're gonna have a headache again. And then you're gonna know to take another dose. That's how stimulants work. They are assigned a time and a duty, and they work at it. Then we have non-stimulants. There's a bunch of different options, but the two options that are specifically approved for direct ADHD use by the FDA are Strattera and Qelbree. So these affect your focus, but they do it
so slowly.
You're not gonna notice. Promise. It's not a take a pill and it solves it situation. It's a long-term thing, and it affects you long-term as well, unlike stimulants, which only affect you for the moment that you're on them. You take it, you don't feel anything for weeks and weeks. And then eventually you will notice that you're kind of steadier, kind of better, you know? It helps from within and you really can't tell. But it helps, and it's the best for people who can't take stimulants, people who have addiction issues, heart issues, whatever, people who are not allowed to take stimulants. It really does help them, and it is specifically for ADHD. So it's good. And don't quit early on these. Of course, you're not feeling anything. You're not supposed to. Don't quit early. Keep at it. Another non-stimulant that is great for ADHD but isn't specifically for it is Wellbutrin or bupropion. Now, Wellbutrin helps your mood and your reactions. And it also builds really, really slowly over weeks. I've been taking it on top of taking Ritalin for the past year and a half or so after 19 years of just taking Ritalin. It gives you that inch of room between what's happening now and how you react. Like you can actually be yourself and not be super reactive to everything or super emotional or not control yourself. I would say that since adding Wellbutrin to my life, everybody says I'm a delight. And people are saying that they can't imagine me being an angry person, which is really funny because I used to be such an angry person. People love being around me all of a sudden. And that's new and it's amazing. So there's two other kind of important ones that aren't stimulants that are often prescribed for ADHDers. There's Intentive and there's Capve. And they are the calming ones, and they settle when you have a really reactive, jumpy side to you that you really can't control. These are really most useful when stimulants are off the table, not an option. But they don't help with the core focus problem. They mostly help with emotional reactivity and dysregulation, which are issues with ADHD, so it's worth knowing. The field of ADHD in general and ADHD medications in particular is always growing. And there's actually a brand new kind of medication that is almost here. It's about to be either approved or rejected by the FDA, and who knows? Maybe it's going to change the world. It's supposed to work completely differently. Keep an eye out. If you like this, if you like me, if you like ADHD, if you have ADHD, please like and subscribe so I know that I should make more videos. And comment if you have any questions, not even about this topic, but about ADHD in general or about your life that you don't know if it's related to ADHD. I would love to make videos that are based on what my viewers actually care about. You are not your disabilities, you are not your hardships. You are your whole story. My name is Emma Gat, and I'm the Gandalf of ADHD. I'll see you next time.